Hi all. Today we're going to talk about Bad Batch Episode 8, titled Reunion. Just as a note, there will be spoilers, so if you haven't watched this episode yet, this is the official spoiler warning. There is a fair amount to unpack in this episode, so hang in there with me for this discussion. The episode starts on Kamino. We see Lama Su talking to Admiral Rampart. Crosshair comes in and informs them that they have found the Bad Batch. Crosshair wants to go after them since they are traitors. Lama Su wants the Bad Batch brought in since they are valuable clones. Admiral Rampart really doesn't care what happens to the Bad Batch as long as they are dealt with because they are clones. Basically, Rampart is giving permission for Crosshair and his new team to take out the Bad Batch. We flip over to Bronca and see that the Bad Batch are still there. The first thing we see is that Wrecker is trying to teach Omega how to disassemble and disarm a thermal explosive. Wrecker states that Bronca is full of unexploded ordnance, so she needs to know how to deal with that in case she encounters it. Wrecker sets it up so that Omega has to disarm the ordnance before it explodes. She fails, and we find out it was really just a smoke bomb. Her first attempt at disarming it didn't go very well, and Wrecker lets her know that his didn't go well either. This is interesting to me, as we have seen her pick up other things without issue, but now we have seen her struggle with learning how to fire the crossbow and with disarming the ordnance. So one of my theories that she is a clone that requires minimal training is pretty much out the window right now because of the past couple of episodes. Echo comes to collect Wrecker and Omega, and they head back to the cruiser. They encounter some scrappers on the way and stun them. Once back at the cruiser, the Bad Batch decide to raid the cruiser in order to find items that they can use to make money and pay back Sid. The option of also making enough off of the salvage to be able to leave Sid is mentioned during this conversation too. During this episode, Echo makes a comment that if they would have gone with Rex, they wouldn't have to worry about Sid anymore. Hunter reminds him that their priorities are different from Rex's right now. I'm not sure if this is a result of Echo originally being more like his rigged brothers than the specialized clones like the Bad Batch. Perhaps he feels a pull toward being involved in something on a larger scale like he was when he was a soldier. I realize the Bad Batch were soldiers too, but they were significantly more autonomous than Echo, which would let them feel more comfortable operating on their own. It could also be something as simple as Echo just wanting to do something more significant than pulling jobs every week to make their ends meet. Okay, so Tech goes up to the bridge to work on getting useful and sellable information in addition to powering up the ship a bit to help the Bad Batch out. Everyone else goes to raid artillery left on the ship. Wrecker is in absolute heaven in the artillery room. He is so overjoyed to find the torpedoes that he even hugs and kisses one of them. Omega is called up to help on the bridge. While there, she tries to talk to Tech about what it was like in the war. He provides a very technical answer. Omega tries to ask again what it was really like, and he still doesn't get what she is asking. He doesn't seem to be able to break the war down further than from a simply logical perspective and describe it in terms of feelings or emotions. We haven't seen a lot of Tech and Omega interacting on a level like we have seen Omega interacting with Hunter or Wrecker. I was hoping that this time with Tech on the bridge was going to give them a chance to interact with each other and let the audience see their bond form, or at least see that they have formed a bond outside of what we have seen on the episodes. We didn't get that, so I'm a little disappointed by that. Anyway, at this point in the episode, a proximity sensor is tripped, and we see 3 ships land. Tech alerts Hunter that the Empire has arrived. We flip back over to Kamino and get a scene of Nala Se coming to talk to Lama Su. Through this discussion, we finally get confirmation that they were the ones hiring bounty hunters to bring Omega back. This confirms that they sent Fennec Shand after Omega. Due to events that are transpiring on Bronca, they discuss sending another bounty hunter after Omega. I still don't fully understand why they would let Omega go with the Bad Batch just to force her back. And really, they did let her go since they helped her and the Bad Batch escape Kamino. I am sure it all comes down to what makes her a special clone. But since we still don't know what that is yet, these actions don't make sense to me. I guess it could be some form of buyer's remorse since they let her go but now want her back? Alright, the episode flips back over to Bronca and we see Hunter and Tech watching what is going on with the Imperial shuttles that landed. We get a close-up of Crosshair and several troopers getting off the shuttles. Tech notes that he is jamming the Imperial scanner, so they shouldn't be able to detect the Bad Batch, and Hunter says that won't stop them. We see Crosshair send some of the troopers to locate the Bad Batch's shuttle, and the rest are going with Crosshair to hunt down the Bad Batch. From here, we see a cat-and-mouse game that takes place where both sides know all too well each other's tactics. This makes it easier for the opposing sides to predict the actions that will be taken. Just as some examples, the Bad Batch link into the Imperial comms to track their movements. The Imperials perform a predictable sweep pattern on the ship. However, I think that the Bad Batch are still weaker without Crosshair on their team. They are missing a significant piece of what made them work as a force to be reckoned with. That missing piece seems to ultimately be what gets them caught, as Crosshair seems to be more of a tactician than the other members in the Bad Batch team. Ultimately, the Bad Batch are funneled by Crosshair and his troopers into the cruiser's artillery deck. The Bad Batch work to hack into the ship so that they can fire some of the cannons. While the Bad Batch are doing that, Hunter and Omega try to reason with Crosshair and tell him he is being controlled by the inhibitor chip. This doesn't work, and it really shouldn't have since it didn't work on Wrecker in the previous episode. Crosshair tells his troopers to aim for Omega. It is at that point that the Bad Batch are finally able to fire some of the cannons, which causes the deck to collapse, creating a lot of chaos, and that gives the Bad Batch a way out from that deck. On the way out from that deck, the Bad Batch encounters a trooper with a flamethrower. Wrecker counters by throwing his torpedo and hitting the trooper, knocking the trooper out. Wrecker notes that it was a direct hit. The Bad Batch make their way to the ion engine chamber, as at this point that is their only other option for getting out of the cruiser. Omega notes that she hasn't been in an ion engine before, and Wrecker, very smartly, replies that it would have been weirder if she had been in one. Crosshair pretty easily figures out where the Bad Batch wound up and pins them down. Crosshair orders the engines fired up in order to force the Bad Batch out so that he can sit in his sniper's perch and pick them off as they exit the engine. In order to keep from being incinerated, or taking their chances with Crosshair picking them off, the Bad Batch use some of the ordnance they picked up to detach the cone from around the engine so that it will fall off to the ground in order for them to escape. The cone successfully falls, but it breaks into two parts, splitting up the Bad Batch. The Bad Batch agree to regroup at their shuttle. At this point, Crosshair's plan literally backfires on him as he gets burned by the engines. He manages to order his troops to turn off the engines, but not before he is injured. We see some of Crosshair's troops come to his aid and call for a medic for him. Crosshair tells them to secure the Marauder, as he knows that is where the Bad Batch are heading next. We see a trooper trying to get a hold of CT-8508, but there is no response. We shift scenes to see that CT-8508 is down on the ground near the Marauder. In this same shot, we see Hunter and Omega pop up as they are the first to make it back to the shuttle. They are of course caught off guard by seeing the troopers lying all over the ground. We then hear a very familiar voice and pan over to see Cad Bane. It was truly a surprise to see Cad Bane show up in the series, but if you have to send a bounty hunter after someone, he is the one to send, since he has proven himself over and over again, even holding his own against Jedi. Cad Bane's droid, Toto 360, is there with him as well. Hunter asks Cad Bane who hired him, and Cad Bane replies that that information is confidential. We then see what turns into an Old West-style standoff between Hunter and Cad Bane. Cad Bane winds up shooting Hunter, which knocks him out, and Hunter shoots poor Toto's foot off. Cad Bane winds up stunning Omega, and that is the last we see of Cad Bane, Toto, and Omega in the episode, as Cad Bane has gotten away with Omega. We then flip over to a scene of Crosshair being tended to by the medic. He is wrapped up, so only one eye is visible, and he has a sling on his arm now, too. The troopers say that they have the Bad Batch on the run, and Crosshair orders his troops to get him on a shuttle. We then flip scenes one last time in the episode to get a view out of Hunter's helmet as he comes to. There is a bunch of chaos as shots are being fired by the Imperials, while the Bad Batch return fire and try to get onto their shuttle. They make it onto the shuttle and take off. Hunter tells the rest of the Bad Batch that Omega was taken by a bounty hunter and that they have to find her. Whew, that was an action-packed episode. So some key points to take away from this episode. We are halfway through the series now, so I'm not surprised that another bounty hunter was sent after Omega. However, I am surprised that a bounty hunter picked her up in this episode, as there are 8 episodes left, so that is a lot of time still left in the season. I honestly expected her to get abducted here in a few more episodes, so that the rest of the season is spent on the Bad Batch searching for her and getting her back, so this was a little earlier than I expected. Since Cad Bane was sent after her, she really didn't stand a chance of not being picked up. I also didn't expect to see Cad Bane in this series, so it was a welcome surprise when he showed up, especially since we all know how good of a bounty hunter he is. Also, as I mentioned, I still don't understand the Kaminoans' motives behind letting Omega go, just to have her picked up again. Not a whole lot has really changed, as the Empire has been pretty clear about ending the clone program from the beginning of the series. I am sure the Kaminoans' motives has to do with what makes Omega special, but still, they shouldn't have let her go in the first place if she is that special. I am curious to see what happens with Crosshair from here. He is now physically injured, and his pride is injured too. As a result, there are many possibilities for him from here. I don't think that him being lightly roasted will be enough to impact his inhibitor chip. However, that isn't to say that the Kaminoans might not interfere and remove the chip while he is being treated for his injuries. Not entirely sure how that would benefit them, but at least at that point, it would be possible for Crosshair to then help the Kaminoans, since he would no longer be a good soldier following orders. There is also the possibility that all this encounter with the Bad Batch does is make him meaner and angrier, since he was wounded on many levels. This could lead to him being more relentless in his pursuit of the Bad Batch, making it harder for them to figure out what happened to Omega. One of the bigger questions left for me at the end of the episode is how the Bad Batch is going to go about getting Omega back. I doubt they will be able to catch Cad Bane and get her back that way. I suspect that they are going to have to go home to Kamino to get her back. This is a very dangerous prospect since there are so many good soldiers following orders there, in addition to Crosshair and others loyal to the Empire. Additionally, we now know that the Kaminoans want Omega back, so they won't be willing to let her go a second time. This also means that despite their hopes of separating from Sid, they might be stuck with her a while longer while they try to gather information about who has taken Omega and where she has been taken. I think the Bad Batch are going to be tested on how far they are willing to go in order to save Omega. Overall, I really enjoyed this episode. I think it was one of the better episodes in this season. Again, not that I have really disliked any of the episodes, I would just rank this episode over some of the others we have gotten so far this season. The episode was action-packed, we got information about who hired a bounty hunter to go after Omega, and we got to see Cad Bane again. There was humor in the episode, but it was handled well and appropriately timed. This episode moved the story along, and I'm really looking forward to the next episode. Alright, so here are my questions for y'all about this episode. What do you think will happen with Crosshair after this episode? Why do you think the Kaminoans want Omega back? What did you think of Cad Bane's appearance in this episode? Also, I would love to use these videos to showcase fan art. If you have any you would like for me to include in the videos, please send it over, and I will do my best to include it. Well, I think that is about it for this entry, so I just wanted to say that I hope you have a great day, and may the Force be with you.